That's quite all right.
Okay, we're going to call tonight's meeting to order. We'll start with a roll call. I'm Bob Carlson, the first selectman. Also, we have Selectman Brett Mastriani and Selectwoman Nicole Porter. And as usual, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, if I could, I'd like to move old business number 12 up to just after the approval of the minutes. The appointment, because we have the gentleman here that we'd be discussing appointing to the Cemetery Commission, so he won't have to be here all night. So we can move, I'd like the motion that we move number 12 up to number 5, just after the approval of the minutes. Thank you. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, one other point of business before we start. If anyone's here for agenda item number 8. Okay, so just for clarification, we've spent over an hour discussing the ordinance change in the last meeting and the meeting before, and we're in budget season, and we really should be spending that time talking about our budget. So if you read, it says discuss a date to have a public information session about the voting ordinance. That's what's discussed tonight. It's going to be discussed by the selectmen. All we're going to discuss is, should we have a public information session? And if so, what will that date be? So we're not taking any comments tonight on the ordinance, so that you won't have it explained to you. I prefer not to have public comment on it, because we have to really spend time on the budget. So I apologize. I figured I'd tell you that soon. So if that's the reason you're here and you'd like to leave before we talk about the budget, you're more than welcome to.
Bob, can I just ask a question? We did not vote on a date for the town meeting.
No, we just said a future town meeting.
Okay, all right.
Yep. So what I'd like to do is, if we approve a public hearing, have that sometime obviously before the town meeting. So we would have, my plan was to have Brett finish the ordinance changes, get them to the town attorney to have them for him to review them, we post them publicly on the town website and on our social media page, and then have the public hearing. And the public hearing, this would be a one topic agenda on this public hearing. We can talk until people are blue in the face. I don't care, because when it comes to the town meeting, we like to hold people to 2 minutes. So, and plus on the town meeting, there's more things on the town meeting than just that. Okay. So that's where we are on that. So is there any public comment on non-agenda items? We will take that now. Jim?
Jim, before you start, can I just test, can everybody hear me online? We have one microphone that doesn't work properly. Who's online? Carl, can you hear me and unmute? Carl's cooking his dinner.
You're good.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we have that. Let me take this.
Take it out.
The back.
All right,
Okay.
my name is Jim Holdridge. I am the Rec Commission Chairman, and I just, per request for our joint session with Finance and Board of Selectmen, that I had to bring more information forward, and that's what I was handed out earlier today, was updated proposed budget. One thing that's significant was the electric and for the building. The electric for the rec field itself was still in a good spot. I think we only had $1,200 charge on that one last year, but the big expense actually was the firehouse, which the phone, which I guess Tom already had a conversation with with Bob about is the Frontier was $2,600 for a phone line.
Yeah, we got a call into Frontier, Jim, trying to find out why we're paying so much money for a single phone that's hardly used.
Right, and I think the only reason why it's there is because of the fire alarm in the building. That's how the fire company knows if there's an alarm going off the building. No antiquated system. And utilities went up. The gas was real expensive because that building doesn't hold very well cheap. So that was the two major expenses that went up from the last proposed budget. The phone and internet went up $2,200 and the utilities went up $700.
So we're going to look into the phone.
I'm looking into the
Okay.
phone. Yep. I think what Jim said is I think it's connected to the fire alarm system, and that might be why. It seems like we're paying an awful lot of money for a single phone that doesn't get used very often, so.
And you're not a resident phone line is like a business phone line, and they.
Bob, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Carl.
Have them check and make sure you're not paying for a direct line for the fire alarm, which is a point-to-point line, and a phone system. There may be two lines there that is on one bill. Just have them check on that.
Thank you, Carl. Exactly what I was going to do. Thank you. All right, Jim.
Because the phone there doesn't really work all that well. And so if we don't have it, it's not any part of it. It's not the, or the landline. Because we can email, and most people have our cell numbers.
Okay. So you're saying if we just have to leave it there to tie it into the alarm system, but discontinue as use as a phone, we could probably live with that?
Yes.
Okay. Great, your questions?
Yeah, just if, when you go back for our meeting, when are we actually discussing? Were we discussing this tonight, this part?
Well,
So,
everyone tonight that has already
Already
presented, which rec has.
so one question I will have for you, if you can find out, is, and I asked it during that Board of Finance meeting, is the mileage cell phone reimbursement for 1,300. So if it's a mileage reimbursement, then that's a mileage log that we need. And I calculate out that's about $1,000, 1,000 miles for the year. So we'd need a log for that if it's a reimbursement. If it's just the stipend for tax and cell phone, then that's a taxable, income taxable item. So we just need to get confirmation on how we do that and what the mileage involved was for. And I know it's been on here for a few years. We didn't catch it until midway last year that it was something on here, but
I was told it's been on there over 10 years.
yeah.
Same amount.
And that could be the case. It doesn't make it legal.
Right.
It's that isn't legal with mileage. Mileage is either a reimbursement based on a mileage log or a stipend, and the stipend's taxable, mileage log is not.
Okay.
And same with the cell phone bill. If it's a reimbursement towards a cell phone bill, then that's something we need receipts for to reimburse for.
Okay.
Sorry, Jimmy, I think it's not that we're saying it's not the right amount or it's not the right thing. It's just, as Brett's saying, it's just how we do it.
How to tax it.
Make sure and I know it was on there, I think it was the same amount when John Hines was the head of the rec department, so it hasn't really changed. And maybe John's situation is different than Tom's too, so I don't know what the situation was back then.
Okay.
And if it is just the stipend that you guys want to give towards that, then that's something we should put in his salary line item
Okay.
as a separate thing. But I would like to know what the mileage is for, where are we running to, those kind of things.
Okay.
But, thanks.
And then just mention to Tom, so he can come in and talk to me in the afternoon if he wants to clear it up. All right, thank you.
Anything else?
No, thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about minutes.
Let's talk about minutes. I'll make a motion to approve the Town of North Stonington's Board of Selectmen meeting minutes held on February 4th, 2025 at 6:30 PM at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it gets approved 3-0. Okay, so we moved up number 12 to number 5, which is vacancies and appointments. So I sent you an email today that Diane Preston had decided to no longer be on the commission, the cemetery commission, which she had been on for a number of years, and she did a wonderful job. And she was a pleasure to work with. I gotta say that. So about 2 years ago, a gentleman named Rob Dean, who I knew from when I ran back basketball, he was one of my coaches for a number of years, said he would like to get on. And I said, well, he filled out the application. If you notice, the application says 2022 on it. So that's when it was stamped in by Antoinette. And he said, well, if I'm not on, can I at least work with the board? And since then, he's done maps. He's investigated. There was a particular headstone that actually ended up belonging to the Mashantuckets, I believe. And he's done so much work on this as not even being a member of the commission. So now that Diane is deciding to retire from the commission, I thought it would be a perfect time to ask Rob if he still wanted to get on. And I said, any way you can pop in tonight's meeting? Says we have this rule now. If I know you, but Brett and Nicole may not. So could you come in and introduce yourself? So Rob, if you could take just 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and I'd be glad to head right over there. Yeah, glad to have the selectman vote.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the invite. My name is Robert Dean. Pretty much a lifelong resident of the town of North Stonington, area. Presently live up on Pendleton Hill, just before Voluntown, 49. But I was saying I got involved with the cemetery commission about 2 years ago, going to the meetings and helping them. Started off by putting out the flags out there for Memorial Day for our veterans. Started working with that, and I also did that work with the Boy Scouts when my son was in the Boy Scouts. So that's what kind of got me involved with doing stuff. We're working with the cemeteries, and since then, attending the meetings and getting to all the meetings and being involved with it and becoming a good friend and a good working partner with Dave Beatty, the treasurer. Have a good working relationship with him. He's taught me a lot about the cemetery business and the way they run the business. So I would be very interested if that position was available to me, that I'd love to have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said, Rob's done a lot of work and without even being on the committee. So it's nice to get someone on that's so excited they're willing to work for 2 years without being on the committee. So Rob, I can't imagine that we wouldn't vote you on tonight. If we do, still an if we do, can you see Antoinette sometime between now and your next meeting? Because in order for you to have voting rights, you have to be sworn in. So just stop by town hall anytime between 8 and 4, Monday through Friday, and go to the town clerk's office. Okay. So go ahead.
I'll make a motion to appoint Robert Dean to the Cemetery Commission.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other
So
discussion?
thank you very much for already
Yes.
quietly participating behind the scenes. We appreciate it. It's one that's, I always feel like the Cemetery Commission is one of the unsung heroes in town that maintains so much and really never gets noticed for it. So we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Rob, then hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Congratulations. Thanks for coming in.
I'll hang around if you, anybody's got any.
Hang around at your own risk. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, we have next selectmen comments. Any comment by either of the two selectmen this evening? None? No? Okay. Same thing with first selectmen comments. I made those comments already that we were going to bypass any long discussions tonight on the ordinance change and move into a more thorough discussion about the budget. Maintenance agreement discussion. So in your packet, there's an agreement that was actually written by Sarah Nelson. I tweaked it, sent it back to her to say, is this what you wanted to do with this? And she agreed it was. And it's something that we as a board need to adopt eventually. Now we can make, the reason I gave it to you, and I don't expect to vote on this evening. I wanted to give it to you a couple of weeks ahead of time. I'd like to vote on this, adopting this at maybe the March 4th meeting. But just look it over, let me know what you think of it. And if it makes sense, or if you want me to tweak it in any way, we can. Once we vote to approve it, and I can just go over it a little bit tonight, we send it to the Board of Education, and they would also have to approve it. One of the big things about this is trying to just give us an idea of when the town should pay for maintenance for the school buildings and when the school should pay for maintenance. But we know it's a work in progress. We just took a number. I took a number and put it into the budget, and it was a partial number of what the Board of Ed considers what their maintenance number will be this year. And it's $100,000. So that's, again, it's a guess. Like we guess on how much is it going to cost to snow removal each year? How is it going to cost for anything in the budget? But so we know that there's going to be times when there might be a disagreement on who pays for what. And at the very end of this agreement, you'll see that we can at any time bring the capital committee back and act as an arbitration board. So if for some reason there's something that has to be done, and first of all, if it's got to get done, let's get it done. And then secondly, as far as who takes responsibility for paying for whatever we had to get done, if we can't come to an agreement, we can have the capital committee meet. And I'm on that committee, so I will step off that for that vote, and they can decide what they say as far as arbitrating the cost of that expense. But you can go through it. Again, we don't need to vote on this evening. I'd like to have it in your hands for a meeting first before we vote on it. And please, by any means, if you want to make any changes, I'm open up to changes. This was a first draft by Sarah, who then I said I went through it and tweaked it a bit.
So Bob, the capital committee is an advisory board, but did they vote on this agreement as it stands?
Yes.
To send it forward? And then who is the ultimate overseer of the maintenance, the bigger maintenance over there? So the stuff that we see in here that is
Are you
brought,
talking capital or maintenance?
so I should say capital. So, but in here it says major systems, maintenance and repair of major building systems, including HVAC, which we know is one of the biggest components that has issues. Who is in charge of those service contracts, all that stuff? Is that something the town would
So
then
this,
oversee?
well, Alan's going to start meeting monthly with Randy to go through making sure that all our service contracts are on the same page. Combine some of them when we have multiple contracts for the same services. And then the Board of Selectmen ultimately have the decision-making power because, as you said, the capital committee is an advisory board.
Okay.
But they can work in as an arbitration board on something like this. And then they can bring it to us and see if we agree with their decision.
Okay, because those are my concerns, are those maintenance contracts, all those things that make sure we're vetted out completely.
I think the first year is going to be the toughest, Brett, because it's a work in progress. It's never been really done like this before.
Yeah.
I think the closest thing to this was maybe when we had a permanent school building committee that we used to fund at $75,000 a year, years ago. But they would fix things that nobody else wanted to fix, like doors and lighting and things like that. So I think it's a good first step. Is the 100,000 the right number? I don't know, but it's a good starting point.
That's the stepping point for this year, you think?
Yes.
To do what this document would say that we're responsible for.
Right. I had a list of what their maintenance was over the last 2 years, and as I highlighted it with Alan, we came up with about 100,000 of those things. So if this agreement was in place, that we probably would have entertained taking the price on that. So actually that's going to impact our budget, what we'll talk about later.
We're physically just gonna, on paper, move it from the Board of Ed's responsibility to our responsibility.
Are you talking about on the budget, or are you talking
Yeah,
about?
so that 100,000 that we are estimating should technically come out of the line item for maintenance for the.
Yeah, I'm gonna let the Board of Ed handle how they're gonna handle that, but yes, if we add it to ours, and I want to present our budget both ways, with and without it. So, obviously we're taking $100,000 of extra expense that we normally wouldn't have, in years past we hadn't. So what does our budget look like with it? What does our budget look like
Yeah.
without it?
Yeah, it'll be important to make that distinction so people don't think that it's,
Yeah, I think in the,
we've upped the budget by $100,000.
I think in the budget I gave you on the first page, I think it showed what it is now, what it would be if I took the 100,000 out, and it drops the percentage down quite a bit. It's on the cover page of your budget. Maybe it's not. Yeah, it is. So where it said there's absolutely no cuts, the budget right now is at 5.68%. And if we remove the school maintenance, we drop down to 3.95%. And I'm going to keep those numbers constantly being tallied up as we go.
You had mentioned snow removal. So right now, removal from the entryways is being done, according to this, by the school. Are we currently plowing the parking lots
Yeah, we've done the parking lots and they've done the sidewalks and the
Okay.
entries. Yep,
currently? And that's how it'll stay in the
Yep.
future?
Yep.
Okay.
So I would just have some questions that maybe we can get answered for before we actually vote.
Sure.
So I know it talks about, and part of this just sticks in my head from listening to the last Board of Ed meeting, but so in this part, it says the town's responsible for fire suppression and alarm systems, things like that. So the camera system, so that just came up, they're needing to replace some cameras and it's quite expensive. Is that falling, those extra security type items, or do those fall under fire suppression alarm systems and electronics, or is that a?
So it's, to me, the fire system and alarms is something you have to have. We have to keep our children safe. As far as the cameras go, I think that can be arbitrated as saying, is that something that the schools added to enhance the school's security? Or is that our responsibility or theirs?
Because when you look at the Board of Ed's responsibility, it is just basic maintenance and things like that. So I worry that we get in those debates quite often about what would fall under, what would not. So maybe having some examples that aren't in here in some.
Yeah, or a clear process, and I know Steph is here, but a clear process of how we communicate that. So they realize that 2 cameras are down and they need to be replaced. Before that's automatically done, I kind of envision Steph or, somebody coming to us and saying, here's the situation. We can have that discussion and decide among us. And then you're saying if there's a difference of opinion, that it might go back to our
The capital
advisory
committee and
capital
eventually to the
committee
Board of
to
Selectmen,
kind of
correct?
discuss.
Because I do worry about things like that when you read what the emergency repairs, in the event of emergency that poses immediate risk of health, safety, and significant property damage, the responsible party may proceed with repairs, and then provide notice to the other party within 24 hours. Now, one thing that came up was like switches in the past, that could potentially be a safety issue, right? Because they wouldn't have phones on. So I worry about things like that getting all of a sudden done and then coming back and saying, okay, well, this is.
I don't expect this to be a daily event.
Yeah.
It better not be a daily event, but I think that Alan talking to Randy, talking to me talking to you guys, I think, and Randy talking to Stephanie, I think that these are going to be, there could be once every couple of weeks, something comes up that we have to handle. So I think we have time to vet these out unless it's an emergency. Emergency, we have to get it done. Somebody has to get it done and then we'll figure it out after that, but we can't put anybody in harm's way, correct?
Yeah. And just as we go through it, and I know we'll talk more about it, but even with those emergency type things, I would think it would be the superintendent also then reaches out to you before. I would like something like that, some kind of balance that at least he's reaching out to you as the CEO of the town, the first selectman that might ultimately have to pay for it anyways, just for you to confirm, yeah, I feel like that's an emergency event.
So it could be the superintendent to me, could be
Right.
Randy to Alan to me.
Yeah.
It's different ways for it to get the information, get over here.
Right.
But I think the reason I didn't want to vote on tonight is because of these, and we can go through this document. And I imagine that the document maybe next year or the year after is going to be a little bit different than this document because it's a work in progress, right? We've never done it in this fashion. And I think we need to do it in this fashion. So is it perfect? Probably not, but we have to start somewhere.
No, I think it's a great start.
Yeah,
and
no,
thanks to
absolutely.
Sarah for writing this up like that.
And that came out of the capital.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Right now, the capital committee is on a bit of a hiatus until this was their first. They did work on capital, then they worked on maintenance, and now they're gonna sit back, and if unless we call them to assemble them for an arbitration issue, then they're gonna stay off until maybe next capital season. We'll see. Okay. All right. So are we okay? We're gonna put that off until the next meeting. We'll have more discussion on it, and it'll be probably be on our agenda for the next 2 or 3 meetings. Thank you. Okay. Number 8, discuss a date to have a public information session about a voting ordinance. So as we know, we've had a lot of discussion about this. We spent over an hour, 2 meetings ago, and over an hour at the last meeting I've seen on social media which I typically don't comment on. It's been talked about there. I've had received phone calls, letters, visitors, and so on, as I'm sure you both have also. My feeling is that getting something out makes sense to me. And my opinion tonight was, instead of having a discussion on this evening, is to discuss maybe coming up with a date for a information session to help explain what it is that this ordinance is trying to do, and then follow that up with a town meeting. Now, we voted to send this to a town meeting, but we did not vote to a date. We just said a future town meeting. So there's nothing in stone as far as there's no meeting been called. Someone called me on that the other day and said, how can you call a town meeting? Well, we didn't. We just said it's going to be at a future town meeting.
So what I was planning on proposing tonight, after thinking about this, talking to residents and really thinking about this process and reading some of the social media posts, I'd propose that we table this discussion until after the budget season, because first of all, listening to the Board of Ed budget coming in with the superintendent's budget at 7.8% or 7.6, I think we're going to have a difficult budget season. And instead of trying to get this in place, because like I said in the past, this is something that I've been talking about for years and years. And I understand that people were concerned about timing and things like that. And there's been a lot of talk about sending it to a referendum, so the whole town can vote in on this. So I would propose that we table this to after the budget cycle to talk about it. Obviously, that would mean it wouldn't go into effect this year if it was approved. And we talk about sending it to a potential referendum at a already scheduled referendum or a town vote, whatever it might be, but nothing's not a special referendum or anything like that. But it would give us a chance to really dive into this budget. It'd give residents a chance to understand it a little more. And then we could open it up to look at some other things. But it would, like I said, we already know that not changing anything would affect the Board of Finance, right, of this election cycle. But other than that, we know people are planning on running. I think Town Hall already got a submission for one to run on the Board of Ed side. But I think it would give us a better handle on getting this information out to the public, because I still strongly believe that this gives the residents the most choice and the power of the vote. And I do strongly believe that it's important for our residents to vote who represents them on these boards. One thing if we do postpone this, I do want to be clear that it's been coming up in emails and online that we have a balanced board now. Why change anything? The fact is we do not have a balanced board. By ordinance statute, we do not have a balanced board. And I think that needs to be clear to residents, knowing that going forward, that isn't the case. It seems like a narrative out there, and a lot of people keep talking about it, and a lot of the emails that we've gotten are consistent with that same messaging. But I think it's important for residents to know that. But and that's really the biggest push for this, is to let residents voice their concerns and vote for the people that they want to represent them. So I'd rather take the time for people to understand the process and understand this ordinance change and potentially put it on a referendum vote. But let's talk about it after budget season. I know Bob gets visitor after visitor on both sides of this issue, talking about it during town hall, when we really need to focus on this budget, because I worry about how this budget affects our taxpayers and how their taxes and the amount they're paying out of pocket with all the increase we see across the country and in our community about people's expenditures. I want to make sure we get this budget right at the minimalist cost to the taxpayers as possible. So I'd prefer that we move this until after the budget cycle, if you guys are on board.
No, so I applaud you for that, and I'll tell you why. Because my biggest fear on anything is rushing something to judgment. And I do agree. And most of the comments I have had are from people saying, I just don't understand what is it you're trying to accomplish here, and how does it affect the town? And be honest with you, I don't truly know if I understand it completely. So I think that addressing this after the budget season, when we have more time, knowing that we're not trying to rush something through so it affects this particular November coming up, We now have until 2027. So why don't we just push it aside for now? And we know it's out there and we can come back and address that at a later date. But to me, I applaud him for doing this, and I think this is a good decision. It takes a lot of pressure off of us to try to get this in and give the budget the time it deserves at the same time. So thoughts?
Well, you kind of took the wind out of my sails because I came in really wanting to just kind of echo everything that you're reading and seeing as well. And the fact that people are reaching out and saying, I just don't understand. So I came in kind of with the expectation that we were going to have a little bit of a disagreement on how quickly we were going to move forward. So thank you. I think that it shows that you walk the talk and you listened and you're and that you're willing to do that. So thank you very much. I'm in complete agreement.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we table this until after, table the ordinance change till after.
Do we need,
Table any discussion
let
of
me
the
ask you a
ordinance change
question.
until after.
Do we have to rescind the motion? Because we voted to send it to a town.
No, because
meeting.
I don't think that we can.
We didn't, we said a future town meeting, so.
Yeah, we didn't ever say that we were going to squeeze it in before the November election. We didn't give any kind of a timeline. And I think, yeah, I mean,
So if you're comfortable, then I don't think we have to vote, if we're just gonna
Well,
table
I
it.
just feel if it's better that it's out there that we voted to move it. So
Fine.
by state statute, if the public did a petition to get something to a town meeting, we have to call that town meeting within 21 days. We aren't under that same guidelines when we call a town meeting. So I just want people to understand we don't have to fall under that same timeline. But I think it's just clearer if we do make a motion so people just don't think we stop.
to make a motion to rescind the
No,
town
not
meeting
to
right now.
rescind, to just, no further discussions until after the budget cycle. If you guys are okay.
I'm fine
I'm
with that.
fine with that.
So do you want a
I'll make a
motion? that-
motion to not have further discussion or vote on the voting ordinance or to send it to, or to schedule a town meeting until we'll discuss it after the budget cycle.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion with the selectmen? No? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And so this will not appear on our agenda until one of you two or myself decides to put it back on. It'll be sometime after budget season. Okay? Perfect. Thank you. Next, 2025-26 budget. So in your packet, so this is the first night we actually are going to look at the budget and find ways that we might be able to reduce it. We don't want to reduce anything we haven't had a presentation on. We have still expect tomorrow evening at the joint meeting with the Board of Finance, we have presentations coming from the Ambulance Association, the fire company, the registrars, and the Wheel Library. So those are coming tomorrow evening. So when we go through the budget tonight, I would,
Tomorrow.
yeah, but it's, we just had 5 at the last one. So I think that when we go through this, I think we'll look at all items except for that. And we have, my plan is to discuss this evening. We have to present it to the Board of Finance on March 5th. So we have another meeting on March 4th that we can discuss again. We will have had all the presentations by then. So that's the meeting after this one.
So I am gonna have to be virtual for that. I'll be out of town, but I will be on.
Okay, that's fine. So whatever we come up with at the end of the meeting on March 4th, that's what I'm going to go to the Board of Finance and with March 5th as our presentation of the Board of Finance as our budget. Okay. So I sent you a copy, and I wanted to just one thing about only have one thing to say about the revenue side. Over the last few weeks, we were able to bring in a gentleman from Colchester, and he was able to do some on-site visits on some of the additions, sheds, decks, and so on that we that have got done that Darrell had just not been able to get caught up with because of his situation. Did he do 58 visits? How many? 88 visits. So what that means on the revenue line, I'll get a definite line tomorrow for you before we have the Board of Finance meeting, but we might be adding about $25,000 to the revenue line which we didn't have prior to, because we didn't think we were going to get these done, and now we're able to get them done. So, and it didn't cost the town any money to get this done because we worked it out through the monies that were already budgeted for the salary for that office. So it did not cost the town any extra money to bring this gentleman on. So that will be a number we'll see tomorrow. So right now there's 127,208 in line A1, and I predict that number to go up by approximately about $25,000, which will then change the bottom line of 451,696.56 to again approximately $25,000 more than that. So this is the revenue line. So line 1, which is the line when we look at our grand list, Brett, and that line should go up by about $25,000. I'll have the exact number tomorrow. And that will also then increase the line A, just after A 5.24. It's the bottom line of the revenue, which is now 451,696.56, and that will go up by approximately $25,000. Unfortunately, it's not as high as it was last year, but it's at least it's an increase. Okay, with that said, I'd like to take this as we go through section by section. I've got my own ideas on where I would like to see a reduction, but obviously at any time you guys can jump in. Going through the general government, which is on page 1, I noted on if something was new, it's the first time we ever had it. I wrote the word new on it. You can see that. And the only thing new on page 1 is B 1.15. It's HR administration, which we talked a little bit about at our last meeting, and that's $750.
Bob, where are you?
I'm on page 3.
Oh, you're on page 3.
But line number B 1.15. Nicole?
Yep, I'm good.
So that's the only thing that's
I know we talked about the HR administration, Ron, right? I know we talked about that, but how did we come up with the 750?
so Sue can talk about that.
So this would encompass motor vehicle checks
Oh,
for,
that's right. I remember it now.
and then
Thank you.
pre-placement physicals. and-
Yep. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
And I again going through this, I had no other reductions on page 1.
Sorry, but are you still confident that regarding the tribal annexation attorney?
Yeah, I just got a final position paper the other day, and I'm pretty confident that we with things that have been changing up in DC, I think that number will hold. I don't
The
think
increased number, you think?
the increased number. So Beck, we could just talk one more time about the very first page again.
Can we go?
The percentage increase is 5.68 is where we're starting with absolutely no cuts. That is our budget, uncut 5.68. And with the $100,000 of maintenance taken out of this, it would be 3.95. So that's our starting point.
Can we just, I'm on grant writer B1.14.
Sure.
So what did we decide to do? We aren't using the same grant
So we're
writer?
not. So Emily Lewis has been writing grants. Matter of fact, she just is completing the steep grant that's due in
Okay.
tomorrow. So what she's met a number of occasions with Suzanne. And right now, Suzanne's working on administrating grants that are already in the system. Emily's writing, in this case, a new grant. And in some cases, Suzanne will be taking over administration of some of these grants. Some will stay with Emily. Suzanne will also be looking at some grants that have nothing to do with Emily, but right now the steep grant was the most important because there was a timeline. So between the two of them, we're in much better position, I think, than we
Yeah.
were before.
And are we paying per,
by the hour.
we're paying by the hour? Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
I think the town, the selectmen said that we wanted to do more with grants. And we think we see other towns that get grants and we wonder, why don't we get some of those? But if you remember at the tri-board meeting, I gave you 2 illustrations where we actually got grants that the town really didn't want. So why go after grants that the town's really not going to want? And then if some other town says, oh, look in the paper, Stonington just got these 2 huge grants, not knowing that we as a town don't want them.
Yeah.
But, and I see that sometimes with grants in other towns like Preston and Colchester. And as you review it though, you might find it doesn't fit for
It
us.
doesn't make sense, yeah. So I know as we've talked with other boards and commissions and Firehouse and the library might have their own situation, but if the Firehouse decided that they wanted to go for a grant, could they work with Emily on their own? And would that would the fee per hour that she would get
So
come out from what we would pay her out of this line item or out of the Firehouse?
So that would have to be decided, but I think 2 years ago as a board, we voted that anyone that's in the budget that exceeded, I think it was $50,000, which was the library,
That
the
we would
fire
allow them to
company,
use
the
our grant
ambulance and
writer.
so on, they would be able to use our grant writer, correct?
They would have to research and find the grant and bring it for
Yeah,
help, right? I think
but
is what
we
talked about.
we would be funding the per hour fee.
If we see
her
that
to
it's
write
going to
for a
be,
grant.
if it's going to be a lot of hours, I'd have to talk to whoever the group is coming to us and say, we can't afford this from the town side. You're going to have to split it with us,
Okay.
but at least we would have the person that could do the work.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? By the way, when we look at the salary lines, I put in and again, we met with the labor attorney today, I just put in 3% just as a placeholder.
Placeholder.
I don't know what it's going to be, but if you don't put in anything, and then we have both
Yeah.
unions negotiating this
No.
spring, so
And when will we know?
depends. Historically, 3 years ago, the town union was settled in April, and the steelworkers, which is the town garage, wasn't settled until late June.
So from a timeline, we would be able to adjust the budget before it was,
We could if we get a settlement before the budget's
Okay.
finalized. Well, I think we have a public hearing on April 27th, so it'd have to be before that. Okay, any other questions on page 3?
I think next week, if you can make these even smaller for me,
Right.
that would be good.
I made mine bigger. See, Nicole,
Oh, you got the big one.
I'm older than you.
So Bob, on page 3, the town clerk office expenses,
Yes,
that increase,
What line are you on?
I'm on B 1002.
so if you've got your book and you look at town clerks, there's explanation on why her expenses. That would be B10.
Okay, here we go.
So you see, Brett, she's giving us an accounting of, and she's very meticulous about doing
Yeah.
this, and she checks with Hartford to know exactly what each thing's going to cost her.
So the legal ad were really huge increase in legal ads.
They have, it has increased, and one of the reasons why is it's according to state statute, we are supposed to use a Connecticut newspaper. We've been using the Wesley Sun, which is less expensive, but they're Rhode Island newspaper. So
But that's who covers us mostly.
it is, but they're not a Connecticut newspaper. So that's something we could argue, but as of right now, and the day is more
So
expensive.
we're going from 400 to 1,300 as a budget.
But I think the reason is doing that is there was, did she mention what was going to be advertised?
More legal ads in this fiscal year for elections, primaries, audit report, Board of Ed contracts. So we pay for the advertising in the Board of Ed contracts?
I'm not sure. I think it goes through the town clerk's office.
Okay. So I guess that's really the only one that is like dues related, it seems like. So it's basically all because of the legal ads. Okay.
And it's not the restoration of grant, record restoration grant, that got decreased by $500. So that was, and that's all said in the revenue line also.
And I know the state actually, they tried to pass a law about the last, I think it was in the last cycle.
It's actually in front of them again this year.
Is it great?
Yeah.
That'd be, with today's
So-
day and age, I think the.
So what that law is that towns can now advertise through the electronic media rather than newspapers, because only, they said 10% of the people read actually newspapers.
So write your legislature.
But we know that the newspapers have a pretty large lobby that lobbies up in Hartford too, because they know that would be a big income loss for them if they didn't have to have legal ads. Okay, if we're ready to go to the next page, which starts with B15, rec.
Can we,
Go ahead.
before rec, can we talk about economic development?
Sure.
So at that last meeting, I asked for a breakdown of operating expenses.
Yeah, so she just sent, she didn't do that. She sent the breakdown of actuals from the previous year. I just saw those today. I think I forwarded them to the Board of Finance, but I don't know if I will forward them to you or
Yeah, I
not.
didn't see.
But it was,
So maybe we can talk about that next time if we can get that information, because I know historically, last year as well, they haven't spent all the money that's in there. And it seems like they've been doing a little less recently, so I just want to make sure we're not.
if Susan Collins is not on the meeting, I'll mention it to her tomorrow. She was very good about getting the stuff for the Board of Finance, which I sent out today, which was they wanted the actual line on the same ask as the budgeted line. So I'll see if we can get that. I understand the page you mean too. 2 or 3 budgets ago, it seemed like it was a more detailed
Yeah, you
page.
get a breakdown of what went into operating expenses exactly, so it would be membership dues, the different chain, whatever it might be, but it was an actual breakdown, so.
And they are not funding the economic development coordinator, correct?
No,
Correct.
but with the increase of 600 operating expense, I'd just like to see what that entails, and I think they still have the majority of their budget available this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm just going to send you what I got today, Brett, so you have it. I'll send it to Nicole.
Yeah, so. Okay, I'm just gonna make a note that if we end up, here's where we start nickel and diming because.
Well, right, we're not, I mean, we're talking about a $600
Yeah.
increase there, 889, but if we haven't spent it the last few years, I don't
Yeah.
want to just put it
Yep.
in to
I agree.
keep it going.
Okay, so that's a B15. B16 is rec. And I did talk to Jim and I talked to Tom about this, and I'm looking to reduce B1606 from $2,500 down to 0.
I agree with that.
It'll be something we'll be discussing in the future, but not at this time. I've got nothing else until we get down to.
Can I just ask, how many hours, I don't know, did Jim, how many hours does the rec director average a week?
Between 20 and 25.
Yeah, between 20 and 25.
I've got nothing else until we get down to the social service and welfare. So if you want to look at the next 3 sections, Nicole and Brett, let me know if there's something there that jumps out at you. Again, if we could stay away from the fire company, registrars, and ambulance at this time because they're presenting tomorrow evening.
So
Did the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center put forward any ask?
They did. It's in, yeah,
in
it's in, I should have brought today. I'm sorry, I apologize. It's in the
So-
folders I'm bringing tomorrow. So yes, I have a
So they
formal
just
ask.
recommended to stay the same
Yes,
as
they
what
did.
we
They
did last
did.
year.
I should have brought your folder and Brett's. All the folders for tomorrow night are together and I didn't bring those. So.
So I would bring up United Community Family Services. It's a pretty large increase
Yeah,
compared to
so
what they,
I have two suggestions on that. One is the Community and Family Services dropped back to six. I was going to take 1,086 out and drop it back to 5,000.
okay,
And on Land Hill Valley, I got a letter from Betsy Graham, and she's asking us to drop her ask from 6,000 down to 500.
6,000 to 500.
What is this for?
So Betsy Graham, it's for the Manton Hill Valley
gotcha.
Association, B2318.
Which we've never funded prior.
No,
Yeah,
so
that's
she went to
brand
Ledyard, and Ledyard told her how tough the budget is this year. Ledyard and North Stonington both own portions of, in the state boat launch is actually in North Stonington on that lake. It's mostly for getting rid of milfoil and things like that, that plants, that invasive plants on the lakes. So she's looking to do a $500 ask rather than a $6,000 ask. And it is truly, just like Wyosip and Billings and Blue Lake, it is truly a North Stonington lake.
But this is about to do plant surveys. Is that?
So her last email, which I thought I forwarded to you, it's where they said they're just asking for $500 now to help them with yes, plant surveys and how ways that they can keep this material out of the water. But they so it's no longer $6,000.
So right now you're suggesting we move it to 500.
From 6,000 to 500, correct?
So, are you done on that one?
Yep.
So I have a question because we have a new ask in B 23.19 for the Sexual Assault Crisis Center. But we are already funding B 23.06, the Women's Center and Safe Futures. Have we gotten any kind of, to me, and they're kind of the same. I'm just wondering where the new ask for the 500.
So that should be in your folder.
Yeah.
Because that came in a while ago. Again, these are new. There's nothing saying that we have to entertain new asks.
Are you looking it up?
It's in there.
So I read about it last time. And
So that would be B 2319.
Do we get any kind of a report? You know how the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center gives us number of clients from North Stonington served on this, rides, whatever. Do we get anything from the Women's Center or we haven't funded the Sexual Assault Crisis
So
Center
we've
yet?
never
but-
funded it before, but
I did hear they do really good work, but it's different. It's slightly different work.
Yeah,
the other
so I
one?
mean, they most definitely, having been in the ER for years, we use them, Safe
it
Futures
says,
all the
it
time.
says, it says in the report, number of North Stonington residents provided services in fiscal year 23-24, and the amount requested for years 25 and 26. So they are giving us a breakdown. It's on, again, it's B 2319. That should be in your binder.
I'm fine
Okay.
for now.
And again, we have another shot at this in on March 4th. So if you have questions on certain ones, as you go back and look at the binder over the next couple of weeks, hopefully it'll help you out some.
So I guess the big discussion would come to the giving closet.
Yeah.
So I did some research on the Giving Closet and how much it would cost if they were to, what does it cost the town to rent out those rooms for free, basically? And it was around $6,500 if we charged the Giving Closet what we charge the early learners, if they're using the same square foot price. And then also what would the utilities be? Utilities are around $1,200 using the same thing with the percentage of footage versus a percentage of footage in the whole town, in the whole building. So between the two is around $7,600 that they have from the town between the use of the building and utilities that they don't pay for, the town pays for. So that, I just want to see where we stood with that.
What did you say, 7,600?
Right around $7,600, yes.
Which is because it's a town building. If it was any real retail or commercial location, it'd be twice that, most likely.
So I have a suggestion on this. Again, you may not agree, but my thought was to, again, it's the first year and I want to see what kind of results we got after this first year, but I was looking to reduce this from 35 to 20. I think Sarah mentioned that there was a $19,000 director's amount of money for the director, and then there was money for other things that 3,000 here, 1,000 there, 2,000. They're in the book. So I just felt that going from 20 would make still the second highest group that we give money to after the Pawcatuck neighborhood, and see how that went after the first year. Again, I'm open to suggestions from the two of you. We've never dealt with this before. So I'm coming in with such a high number in year one.
Yeah,
But-
I would be close to being on board with that.
I mean, if that's not the right number, tell me, but I just,
I wrestle with what the right number is because
So do
it's
I.
a valued service.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a hard.
yeah.
I think, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, and we know they service more than just North Stonington, so that's where I wrestle with the total dollar value as well. And then it's a big ask in a tough year. But I want to know, did we get any more clarification on how we would be paying that out? What would that method be? I think we were all on the same page. It really can't be a town employee.
correct.
But how does that fall under getting nonprofit under the town versus where she is with the school?
So I thought we didn't want that to become part of a town nonprofit. I wouldn't want to treat it the same way we treat any of the other nonprofits like Pawcatuck Neighborhood. So the organization would get the funding and then they would decide how they would use that.
But right
funding.
now, she doesn't have an organization. So right now it goes through a school activity account. So
Right.
I just don't know how we would pay.
Well, maybe that organization would have to be set up before. If
Right.
if we could agree on a number and then providing they have the organization set up before the money's paid out.
Yeah, I think that's what we would have to do, make sure it's set up before it's paid out, but I'm all in favor of funding. The dollar value is tough, but knowing that and hearing it, the needs, they're there. So I'm okay with that 20,000 to put in as of now, and then
One of the calculation I did is I think she said that 46% of her customers, clients, users were North Stonington residents. If you took the 35,000 times 46%, it's $16,100. So it's as of right now, it's kind of a 50-50 in town and outside of town, but there's no, I think Sarah mentioned that she wasn't going to any other town to ask for help. It would just be our own town. So if we were going to give her help, and it's only our own town, it's 46% of our residents, then should we use 46% of the ask or not? And I'm willing to go higher than that, than 46, because that's 16.1. I'm saying possibly $20,000, which would cover hopefully money towards the director, but also for some of the other expenses that they pick up.
I think she also said that she would lower her director pay by up to 2,000. Okay, but I'm not saying we need to ask her that. Once she gets that money, that's up to them how they do it. It's
Right,
other-
I think
other
we-
than our discussion, but does this play anything into? So we never funded the food pantry. Is it because they never asked? I guess. Does that cause any kind of issues, concerns?
I don't know if it causes an issue, but you might get an ask from the food pantry in the future, I would think. And I think we'd have to look at each request individually. And so I don't think one gets it because the other one does. And each one has to stand on its own merit. And maybe we start thinking about, well, maybe we take care of in-town stuff first, like the Giving Closet and the food pantry and so on. And then people like Walk of the Neighborhood who can show us numbers that they do help North Stonington residents. But some of the other organizations, I don't know how many by Always Home and Safe Futures and some of the other people we fund.
And maybe that opens up a different discussion of social service person for the town from the down the road, right? As we know, we won't have Teresa at the senior center forever and some other things. So maybe we have to think long term about this plan. So it's probably nothing we can solve now about this. So I guess we start somewhere.
Yeah, I do think though that there's watching Sarah's presentation and knowing, we all know what kind of work she does in town, and it's thankless work that takes a lot of her hours. And I know also has taken money out of her own pocket to pay for things. I just think that going from getting no funding from the town to $20,000 would be a good start for year one. And then we could maybe see how that goes, and maybe year two looks like a different number. But again, it's a tough spot because it's such a big number on it, and we don't have. This is not a big budget. We as you know, we already talked about $600 and $500, and now we're talking about $20,000. So when we go through our budget, we're pretty fiscally responsible, and it's just that. I don't think this is a number we've ever get asked for off the start from day one.
I mean, I think part of what I worry about, and I think that I asked her about the sustainability and her succession planning for that, right? I don't think any of them, mostly her, expected for it to take off and become as big as it did. And so I think we've got to try and help her put some structure to it so that when we know, right, we're about to hand over potentially $20,000 to them. And yes, although we don't ask any questions to the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center, right, their structure is really formed, and there's things in place that are going to prevent it, right? I think one of my concerns is that if Sarah and her family decided to leave and move away, what happens to that, and what happens to the money that we've put into it? Who is going to take that over? So I'm okay right now. Like, I want to, I would love to see them apply for their nonprofit and become a nonprofit organization. And I'm okay starting with the 20 and talking from there. But I think we need to get her set up with some people that can help her with a lot of that planning.
Because I would piggyback on that a little bit, saying if for some reason we can't get to that point within our budget cycle, then maybe it is something we pull out of the budget at some point and ask for an appropriation at some point. Because I do think it needs to be set up before we can give money, because otherwise it's just a volunteer asking for us to give them money.
Exactly.
And it's nothing against Sarah at all.
No.
It's just, like you said,
It
we have
just-
to make sure the organization's in place. But I do think it's something we should help fund.
But we
Yeah.
could, why
That brings
couldn't,
up I'm kind of interested in looking at an appropriation. I'm fine moving forward with this and
Right.
decreasing it to 20, but kind of reserve the opportunity to have more discussion.
why couldn't we
later on.
approve it as 20, even if we're through the budget cycle, but say it's not going to get paid unless there's a contingency with that. It can't be paid unless there's an organization set up to pay it too. So we can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So-
I mean, we just can't.
We can, I feel more comfortable with the organization requesting it. And that's something I guess we can find out how that process would work.
Yeah, I don't know if there's enough time for that to get done between now and May. That's all I ask. And I
So
would-
you're right. So I guess if we put it in the budget, it might take till it might take till October for her to
Oh,
get that set up, and then we pay out then.
When some of the ones like like the library and the fire company, and the bigger ones, we pay 50% and then 50%. So we don't have to, a lot of these people aren't getting their bigger numbers until halfway through the year anyway. So we can just say it can't get paid out until we know there's an organization set up to pay it to. And we would have to have record of that. So just because the budget, if it passes and we started on July 1st, doesn't mean it has to be paid on July 1st.
And do we have to, on this, as we move through this, is this anything we have to worry about insurance or liability, or is it all covered from the town insurance?
So the town's insured on all, and maybe Sue can talk about this. The town's insured by Kerma on all the town buildings.
But so do we request that the daycare have their own? I
think
hope
she
that
carries her own
they
insurance.
Carry their own insurance.
They
It's
do.
usually a requirement of a lease, but this we're not leasing. We don't have any formal agreement with. So I got nervous a few months, maybe last month, when there was like a slip and fall. Somebody, a box fell on their head or something out here. I just worry about what's our liability long term if we don't have some kind of, like you said, structure in place and maybe an agreement for the space.
So we do have, again, we have insurance with use of the building, because if someone could slip and fall coming into a meeting.
Right,
So-
but that's a town meeting. so
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're covered, and that might just be part of this process. Okay, you have an organization, now we have an agreement.
So what we can do, Sue, is maybe next time we talk to Kerma, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I believe they'll have to get a certificate of insurance and name the town as additional insured. And it has a minimum requirement for the work comp and for the coverage for liability. So, and that's what the nonprofit would have to provide, even though they're in a town building.
Right,
they'd
so
have
right
to
now,
get
she's a
that.
nonprofit under the school. So
Right.
maybe that's what keeps that covered right as of today.
So how does that affect the food pantry?
I don't know.
Mm.
It's probably something we should have a hand.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to make it so complicated that these are such phenomenal services and people that are doing this. I hate to make it more complicated, but you're thinking of a slip and fall. I'm thinking, I don't know, somebody was running a space heater in there one day and stuff catches on fire and like, where does that responsibility lie?
We have people from all different communities coming in there.
Yeah,
It opens up our liability a little more than some of the
So
others.
let's discuss that with Kerma and see what our
And
options
maybe
are.
it's simple if we're overthinking it, but.
I would hate to have Mrs. Costanza pay for insurance when we're not funding her.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I,
100%.
yeah, and I also don't want to start chipping away if they're gonna have to purchase insurance. I
Right,
don't want to
that's
start
it.
chipping away at what the good that they're doing and them now having to cough up that money. But, so, I mean, I think there's a lot of work to be done on something that, just like I said, exploded and got so big so quickly. But I'm okay for now and backing down to it for
Okay.
20.
I'm gonna put 20,000 in there.
Correct. Are you tracking these at all, Sue?
I am, yes.
Perfect.
Eastern Connecticut Conservation District.
Yeah, can you tell me?
So they're in your book right after the other one. They gave us multiple pages. Again, it's a first time ask of $500. So what I try to do, Nicole and Brett, is anytime someone asks, I just accept the request and put it in the book and we
Yep.
decide that. So I wouldn't turn anyone away unless I've talked to you two first, and ultimately, if it gets that far, to the voters. So. I mean, this might be something that you're out of Norwich, Connecticut. It might be one of those things when we say, well, we should be taking care of the North Stonington things for us. That again, something to maybe read between now and the next meeting. And if we have to go and, after we present to the Board of Finance, if they say it's not good enough, you have to go back and cut X number of dollars out of this, and we have to go back and look at some of these things a second time.
But this is not somebody that we've funded before.
No, it's new.
And, I appreciate that they help with agriculture and all those things, but if we're putting a $20,000 ask in for someone that's never been in, that is based in North Stonington, maybe we have to take out some of those other ones for this year until we
Agreed.
get a handle.
So let's see.
Because every $500 adds up.
let's see what we come up with for our best budget as of March 4th and see what the Board of Finance says. And if they say not good enough, then we're gonna have to go back and go for
Do you
deep.
want to leave those other two new requests in until?
They're fairly small requests, and I think just for now. I'd rather go after some of the things that move the needle a little bit more. Another new one is 2322. You see that one? And that will be in your
Yeah.
packet, packet that I failed to bring tonight, but it's in, it's already
And
been.
what is the 1,500 for?
So she's put on as Frights and Lights, and she also has put on the Christmas
Yep.
parade, and she has taken money out of her pocket to get things done and so on, whether it be permitting lights and things to make things look nicer. And she's asking to, again, I think this is one that you say, what do you get for your money? And what we get from the Frights and Lights and it's hard to put a price on. They're just such heartwarming events that the town.
Oh, I completely agree. I just didn't know, is she?
I don't think it's in your book, but Sue, do you have your copy of the Frights and Lights one?
There was something about bistro lights, hanging the bistro lights. Or?
Yeah, Nicole, this is what you're gonna get in your packet tomorrow, that when I actually remember to bring it.
So
She's also, so have you heard of America 250 yet? Have you heard of America 250 yet?
I have.
Okay. So America 250 is the 250-year celebration of the United States of America. And it happens not this July, a year from July 4th, 2026. The governor has asked each of the 169 municipalities to put together a committee to have some sort of an event that day or that evening to commemorate the 250 years of the United States being born. And I showed the information to Jen, and Jen took about 3 seconds to say, I got it. So she's taking all the information. She's talking directly with the coordinator out of the governor's office. She's already forming a committee. She's tentatively planning on a huge North Stonington driven rock concert at the fairgrounds with only North Stonington bands. She pictures balloons and hot dogs and dunk tanks and bands, and quite the thing. And I'll be honest with you, when I told the governor's office what she was planning, they were pretty excited that no other town in southeastern Connecticut has come anywhere close to what she's already planning. So I think that goes into this too, when I think about that. So that would be a next year's budget. But I think that the fact that we have someone in town that is willing to just take hold of these things and do these wonderful
Oh,
things for the town
Yeah,
makes sense.
again, another
Oh,
great.
you're not on that committee?
I am on, yeah. I mean, I didn't realize it was a committee.
I figured she was
volunteered
you.
for the
And
last
I thought she was
5
number one or number two phone call. I would think.
So I'm just wondering, right, we always talk about rental versus purchase. And that particular document suggests the rental and installation of the bistro lighting in downtown. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to just purchase something and store it and take it out each time. Why are we gonna rent?
It might be, and that maybe is a conversation with Jen. I didn't
Yeah.
think she needed to come in for $1,500, give a presentation. I just thought it,
So are they saying the fees for the vendors and all that stuff doesn't cover?
she just said she could use some help financially on what she feels that she spends to get these things going.
I mean, I know she normally puts out and people will have in the past purchased and donated items for Frights and Lights in particular.
I think the vendors pay the fee of the
They could be.
vendor.
But I think there's other things she talks about, whether it be signage, advertising, but again, it's.
And then we pay, who is paying for the trooper?
We do.
Okay.
Which, do we have an estimate on how much that costs?
No, we just got an overtime bill that you guys signed not too long ago. Wasn't it high? We usually do well on overtime.
So that's all overtime that we pay.
But again, but when you think about, again, what is it doing for the town? I mean, we spend very little as a town when it comes to these kind of things. And I think, and they're such popular and big events, and they bring the town together, and,
No, I love what they've become over the years.
So I'm just thinking, I personally didn't want to touch that 1,500 now. We'll see what happens down the road.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch it now.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so information technology services, a little off track. We've had 3 interviews. We have another one set up. Do we have the other one set up yet?
Not yet. I'll call in the
We're
morning.
trying for
right?
this week. We have 2 candidates that are possible candidates. I don't think either one I would start at the top step. I do have this right now at the top step. So
So you consider that 76?
even though it says it's an increase right now of $2,000 to $112, it may not be that, because I think it goes from, is it 71 to 76, 71.5 to 76.5, Sue?
Yes, yep.
So I'm probably looking more in that 72, 73 range.
Right, so why don't we, so we didn't have it in the original one.
Hmm.
We didn't have it in the original budget,
No, so there was things between,
Have what in particular?
the increase.
on the first draft. There's things that happen between draft, that's why there's a draft too. There's things that happen with late coming asks, like the price and lights.
So
Uh,
I'm just talking about like this coordinator, the increase in the coordinator.
So only because we discussed, when we had to start advertising it, we did the first draft before we started advertising and bringing these people in for interviews. So just to be safe, I put it in the top step, but doesn't mean I'm going to the top step. I don't think we need to.
So we'll know that by,
I will know that hopefully within another week. If we make an offer to somebody, that would happen probably next week or 2.
So we have the potential to actually see a little bit of a savings in that.
We
Right.
could.
so I will, why don't we take that out for now?
I didn't know what we we're gonna get for applicants, and I still don't know. We could still have another applicant come in, it just, blows us away with his
I
or
mean, this
her
is only
ability.
round 1.
Yeah, we have, we'll know by March 4th, put it that way.
All right. Can we get updated ones for our book?
They're in there. They're in the packet I didn't bring.
Oh, okay.
So not only you're gonna get tomorrow
They are a
night,
lot clearer to read.
tomorrow night, you're gonna get on draft 2 and draft 3. Because what happens tonight, then that'll cause us to have draft 3. And then hopefully I'll go to the Board of Finance with draft number 4. So, and I can, if you want, I can do them landscape. They're bigger that way.
For some reason, this one is so much clearer and easier to read than this.
I don't know why that came out so small.
I don't know.
All right, so we're not touching B26 right now, right?
Okay, so we're at public safety.
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was Firehouse.
What's
Okay.
the big increase on the volunteer fire? Are we not talking?
Yeah,
that's
we're not
tomorrow
touching
night.
that now, right?
So see, it's in pink, so you volunteer fire and ambulance tomorrow night. But
And then that's nice to see that savings for the 911 in changing our dispatcher, right?
yeah, that was
That's where we see the savings in changing companies.
yeah,
moving from Groton.
10,972.
Yeah, okay.
And we also have a big increase, a decrease rather, in the trooper change. It says happened on 2/7. That's a change of,
Why?
Fringe benefits.
because I think some of it's to do with the trooper we had last year before we had Alex was at a higher step.
Oh,
So I just got this information from the trooper's office the other day. So we went from 385, 405 down to 293, 634. Right, so
What, the flock cameras, how do we decrease from 73? No, you increased from 6 to
because
73.
after we said they were $3,000 a piece, we found there was reading the paperwork again, and it's in your book. Or maybe it's in the folder I'm bringing tomorrow. We found there was a one-time setup fee the first year of $1,300, which is, it says here, one-time new.
Okay.
So it's a one-time setup fee, and once you pay it, once you don't pay it again. Again, I'm not sold that we have to have these. I know that Jay would like to have them. I think that troopers in general would like to have
I know
them.
they do help solve a lot of crime as well.
But I think that's something that we could go back and look at if we have to.
why isn't the state paying for it then?
Because it's an independent company that that does this throughout the country.
So even though it's a state road, there's no way to lobby for it through the state?
No, nope,
Do we have to get state approval for putting
nope,
down? a
they already
state
got
road?
state approval. Matter of fact, Lisbon just put in 5. And I was looking to start with 2 and just have 2.
I mean, for me, right now, I'm starring it just to
Yeah,
have
that's
something to
okay.
go back to.
Yep.
For a start.
The other thing on this, again, not speaking about the public safety stuff until tomorrow.
Yep.
Looking at B2716 training, $8,000. And I cut that from 8,000 down to 5,000, like 3,000. I'm suggesting we take $3,000 out of that
Where
line.
are you?
B2716.
And this is, Alan was talking to us about, right, realizing that there were people that had not kept up with
Yeah,
certain
so it's,
requirements and
go ahead.
training.
Yeah, so I talked to Ellen today. What we're gonna do is for the next year, see what's critical for the training that has to happen in the next year. And I think we can see a good reduction from there and then revisit the following year and get on schedule with everyone's training. And we're looking at different companies and where we can get the best, quote for the
Okay.
training.
So Bob, you want to?
I'd like to drop it from 8,000 to 5,000,
that
take
would work.
3,000 out of it.
I'm comfortable with that too.
And
with
so
that
it's
explanation.
B2716.
Yep.
Did you see on B2727 office supplies, $4,000? That was a submission error. When Alan gave me his original ask, that was not on there. He took it out of another line to move it, but we never put it on a new line. So that $4,000 says changed on 25 submission error.
So
That's on
B27.27.
B2727.
27. So I'm sorry, he's taken
He took,
office supplies out of one line item and
Mm.
he's creating a line item specifically for office supplies to
Correct.
track.
correct.
So the 4,000 is really just, is it neutral? Is it budget
Yeah,
neutral?
CB 2725, where originally there was a
Operating
$4,000,
expenses?
there's a $4,000
Gotcha,
savings
okay.
originally.
Okay.
But then he took it out of there, but he wanted to create a new line to separate those. And we
Yep.
never created a new line.
Okay. But it's essentially.
It
budget
didn't change the
neutral.
budget, it just moved.
Yep.
Moved it down.
Regarding the tipping fees, I know we talked about at the meeting. Do we show that revenue coming into that we're charging outside haulers?
Yeah, so that should be on the revenue, in the revenue pages.
I didn't see it on one of the other.
That's it, A 5.10,
Which number? Sorry.
A 5.10. Tipping fees got increased by $85,000.
Okay.
And that's going to the higher tipping fee, as you suggested. I think it's $2 or $3 more than what we pay.
Right. Process.
And again, I think after we have our presentations tomorrow evening, when we get back together on March 4th, I think we'll see some rather large reductions in some areas.
The senior center operating expenses down 2,000. Do we know the reason for that?
Yeah, just because I think we've had, when I look at actuals over the last 2 or 3 years, we haven't been coming close to what the budget was. So I said to Teresa, why we keep budgeting and we're not hitting that number with, why have the tax base pay
Okay.
for
As long
something?
as we're not reducing
No,
services. Okay.
no.
Bob, do you know what we get for our money for the public health nursing VNA?
Yeah, so the visiting nurses, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So the visiting nurses go through the senior center and they.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Then legislate, that increase is just contractual.
So the legislative increase goes by, it's the first increase they've had in 5 years and it goes by population. So it was a very minimal, so it's whatever the number was times 50, 200 people.
And I know we talked about looking at other options in the past. Is that something that we?
As
still-
far as health district.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to Patrick McCormick a number of times. He's the head of UNCUS. That's the only other district we could go to. And he would have loved to take us, but he doesn't have the people to
So
do it.
still doesn't have that.
No. No. And I'll be honest with you, legislate has a change at the top. Steve retired and Jen Mungio is taking over. And I find it much better to work with than it
Yeah,
was in the past.
Just being on the board of directors, she's really great. And we did talk at the last directors meeting that they were going to probably have to increase. There's a lot of concern about what funding might be cut for them. And it is the first increase that we've had in a couple of years.
But I find her very easy to work with.
Yeah. Oh, no, she's wonderful.
Right. I
She's
guess
very
some of the
transparent.
concerns in the past were we're one of the few smaller towns they work with. It was
Small and
Right.
rural. We
Right.
don't, so they don't have really any other small rural towns other than
Yeah.
North Somerton, where we might fit better with Uncas. But Uncas has, they've had 5 towns asked to join Uncas because of the Northern Health District wants to come into Uncas from the north, and he just didn't have the people. We're number 1 on the list if he gets enough people to,
Okay.
if we want to still change at that point.
so C.
So seed is one that I'm thinking we're gonna knock that out, go down to 0.
Okay.
We accomplished what I needed to accomplish. I've had meetings with Lisa, not only at Stop and Shop, but in my office.
Yeah.
And she totally understands what the deal is there.
So are you proposing that now? We pull that to
Yep.
0?
I
Okay.
am.
Yeah.
So that would be line
It's unfortunate.
B
right?
30.05.
Yep.
Sue?
Get it?
And then B 30.08 is the line we talked about earlier, which is the maintenance line, which I think it's going to be a 2 to 3 year work in progress.
And we'll wait on the library.
Library's tomorrow evening,
Yeah.
so I don't think it's fair to talk about one that's not presented as of
I
yet.
agree.
Yeah, and I think with that school building maintenance, I think it's like Nicole said earlier, it's important to, if we're keeping that in, to make sure we explain it well during the
Yeah.
town meeting.
Well, every time I do a summary page, I'm going to do what the percentage is with and without it, so we all know. Because I'm confident we can get this down. If we took the 100,000 out below where we were in last year's budget increase. Last year, our budget increase was, I think it was actually I have a copy of last year's budget in here.
I think the problem is the public's not gonna clearly be able to look at the Board of Ed budget and say, oh, look, that's $100,000.
Right, because, I mean, right now
less.
with this discussion, they're still at 7.87%.
Yeah, so it's just it'll be a challenging message to
So
get across.
with my going through this again and looking at some of the things that you haven't even presented yet, but looking at where we would be with this budget, I think last year we were at 242,648 increase with a 4.37. I think if you take out if we do our job and get this budget to where it needs to be, I'm confident we're going to get down to more like the $200,000 mark and be in the low 3s or high 2s as far as the budget increase, which would be a big decrease from last year.
With or without?
If we took the
If we took
100,000
the
out.
100,000.
I think with the 100,000 in there will be slightly higher than last year, but we explain it by the 100,000. If you take that out, then we'd be quite a bit lower than we were last year.
Yeah.
I mean, 100,000 is a lot of dollars in a small budget like we have. Okay.
Maybe the Board of Finance will want to put a pool of money in from the undesignated account to just start that.
So where were we? Where did we leave off?
Land-
Land use. So there was, sorry. I had 2 reductions, one reduction in land use. I talked to Bill Wazika and B 34052, 34053, water sewer analyst, which is Bill himself. I asked him if we dropped that, and I see we did drop that down by $5,600. But just above that, where we show miscellaneous and planning, He felt we could take $1,500 out of that and just go in with a flat 25, excuse me, take $1,500 out of that. So we go from 3,500 to 2,000 even.
So that's still $1,000 increase.
Yes.
And what is that increase?
So he's thinking of planning he has to do with some of the developments that are coming into town, like the EB building, things that are being proposed for town. He wants to make sure he has enough money to do what he has to do on his side.
So did the WPCA vote on this?
I don't know. I know he goes to all the WPCA meetings. I'm not sure about that.
And dropping to 10,000, is that kind of like his stipend?
So he gets paid only when he works, but he gets paid by the hour, and he's scheduled to work 10 hours a week. But if he doesn't feel like he has 10 hours worth of work, he'll only work 4 hours or 3 hours. So he's very good about his hours. He's one of those people that does never want to charge the town more than what he's giving us. So.
Yeah. So he thinks he can accomplish what he needs to accomplish.
He does with that decrease, but then the one above the miscellaneous planning, which was $1,000 last year, he bumped it to 3,500. He's willing to take. He's thinking to take $1,500 out of that. He'd still be okay at 2,000.
Okay. So we're dropping B34,052 to 2,000,
Yes,
and we're keeping 34,053 at the 10,000 then.
correct.
Okay.
So then affordable housing, do we have a 35?
There really isn't a well-designed ask in here for that, but you can look at it.
Yeah, so we went from a placeholder of $1 to 1,500. Is this to help them start preparing
This will
for?
be used for possible expenses related to the proposed project
Yeah.
behind Chucky's.
So the only thing we're doing there is, and we haven't set it up yet, is the test holes, perk pipes, which we're talking to CLA and Alan. We have to wait till the ground gets softer to do that. So we're probably looking at maybe April to do that. Once the test holes are done, that will determine whether this project can go any farther or not.
How do you feel about that?
I'm fine leaving it there for now, but I think if the test holes come back negative and we can't do the project, then that money won't be needed. I mean, if worst comes to worst, it goes back into the
Yeah,
undesignated
I was
fund.
gonna say, right.
Because I do feel like if they do move forward with some kind of project there, they're gonna need more than the $1,500, and that'll be an additional request.
Like an appropriation of some point. And that's all I have for this evening. So I don't know.
Do we have a
didn't,
grand total of how much we've
I don't know.
cut?
Depends if Sue's,
Always makes me depressed hearing that we
I don't have a,
Well, can I,
came up to a
can we
whole
go to the
2,000.
capital real quick?
sure.
What page are you on?
Page 7. C124, the crack seal parking lots, town hall, 298 building.
Mhm.
That 25 grand in that, is that something we could have put in the steep grant?
Possibly, but the steep grant's due tomorrow. We have 2 parking lots that are in the steep grant, which we'll talk about in a minute, what's in. I mean, we could move, let's say that we decided that one of those we didn't want to do, we can move that parking lot to,
Or why
Who
couldn't
knows?
we just, so we can talk about the steep grant in a minute, but from what we saw, we weren't asking for the full 1 million.
no, so we have a quote on that too, I think, right? The 20
Right, so I would think that's easy enough to add that
Maybe
in,
we could, I can talk to Emily about it in the morning.
Yeah. because if we could do that, at least that's an extra 25 grand off our capital.
What line is that?
See, let me, if I move it out here, CL 24 or C124,
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no L.
very small.
Got it.
So I think
got
that's
it,
a good,
okay.
I think that's a good thought, Brett, and I'll mention it. If Alan's on the line, remind me tomorrow, Alan, that we can, and I'll talk to Emily about that.
Because it fits all in line of the other parking lot, so if you
Yeah.
can throw that in.
Okay, and that would decrease the capital by 25,000, which,
And we should know about the steep grant before this budget goes through usually.
I think it usually takes about 45 days.
Right.
I think we should know.
So do you want to, do you have any kind of a number? So,
We don't need
Do-
to, but
Did you want me to do the steep, the crack seal, the 25,000?
no,
out, or
leave
you
that,
wanna hold?
leave that
Leave
for
that
now,
in.
but just out of the operating budget, not the capital.
Right.
So we were at 5.68% for the operating expense budget. and Now we're down to 5.02 with the cuts tonight. If you take out the school maintenance, it was 3.95%. And after our discussion tonight, it's now 3.30%.
Yeah, I'd like to get the percentage under 5 on the, last year we're at, I said, we're at 4 something. Get the main number under 5 and get the number under with 100,000 taken out, under 3.
I agree.
If we could do those two things, I'd be pretty excited.
I don't want to, at the same time, I want to be conservative on this and do what we can. But I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. Like I said, especially listening to that Board of Ed meeting and when they came in at 7.86 and some people said, well, let's add more back into the budget. That scared me. And that made me
what
nervous
did
about this whole
Stonington
project.
just 6 point?
Well, it was approved by the
6.4,
board,
I think.
approved by the Board of Ed, but not approved by the town.
No, I know, but they just put forward a 6.4.
Right. So the Board of Ed sent that to the Board of
Yeah.
Finance.
The scariest thing I heard at the last meeting was the fact that maybe you just said this, that going back in the capital, is that what you said?
What's that?
Going back in the capital, that scares me.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to go back.
Because why spend those 2 or 3 months in October, November, December, coming up with a capital number, then go back and
Yeah.
using that number?
Yeah, I don't want to touch capital unless absolutely necessary.
I'm,
But that's why that 25 grand to me, it fits in kind of where we were.
I'm concerned that when you asked the Board of Finance to vote on the capital, to approve it as is, they weren't willing to do that. And I think the answer was, well, we might have to go back and revisit it.
Which to me, you're right, defeats the whole point of us trying to get capital done out of the way early. So we don't touch it and we
Yeah.
have what we need.
Okay. Anything else on the budget?
No,
I
I think
think
that was
that's a
enough for one night.
decent start.
Mhm.
We'll see what happens after March. But please, if you can, look at some of the things in your binder. I'll bring you the other sheets that you didn't have tonight tomorrow. I'll look and see if the budget's a little bit bigger print for you. If not, I could do it landscape and that'll make it
No,
a
if
little bigger.
you just do it like this original booklet, it's
Yeah,
perfect.
not bad. Okay, let's see how it came out. And I don't know why it came out different, to be honest with you. Okay, so steep grant.
Can I
So
just say something just kind of really silly? I think the purchase of 2 laptops or tablets or 3. Do you have a docking station for yours that you can pick up and bring home? Your computer at work, or is that not allowed?
no, I don't have that.
So I mean, my work one, I can bring anywhere. I can work on my laptop anywhere and but all of the paper, if I just had my laptop in front of me, we could look at everything. It
Well,
would pay,
Brett brings
the
his.
paper would pay
Yeah.
for the laptops, just saying.
True.
So this is just first time we tried this booklet form. And
Yeah. No, this is amazing. I'm just,
Bob, you should put in a docking station at home. $199 for an HP docking
I'll
station.
be retired by then.
then we could just all work 24/7.
Stop trying to
On to
drag me into
steep,
another
right?
century. Okay, so now we're at steep grant. So I sent you an email.
Yep.
And I'm going to look at the one that Emily sent me. So again, we're trying to get this in tomorrow, and I will ask Emily if we can add the parking lot for the town hall. So that was 298 and the town hall building.
In the transfer station pad, so in there, the projects are 298 parking lot, 297 parking lot, transfer station pads, Ruderman Road culvert pipe, Hangman Hill culvert pipe, North Stonington Ed Center meeting space, including doors and walkway. So what are the transfer station pads for? Are they for the new compactor?
Is Alan up there? Because he can explain. That's why I asked him to be on.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So the pads are going to go outside of the bays those compactors are in, and it's just to keep the water out of the bays now that we're going to be pouring the floor flat because those compactors can't sit in the angle that is in the building now. So that'll try to keep the water out, keep the containers out of the dirt and the mud and frozen to the ground, I'm hoping, and just keep them clean and, like I said, out of a lot of the problems there right now.
And those are, so the two pads are $76,800.
For both of them. Yep.
And is that hiring it out or us doing it ourselves?
Nope, that's hiring it out with 10-inch thick pads. That way, they're with the weight on them. There's no cracking. Pinning them to the building so they don't hopefully move at all, and pitching them away from the building. That way, when the snow and ice is melting, it hopefully doesn't go in the bay, like I said, because it'll be a flat floor in there.
Don't forget too, Brett, the, anything that's in the secret, even though we get it approved, it starts to be vetted out.
Right, we still have to put it out
Board
for
of
bid.
Selectmen, the town has to go to an RFP, the town has to approve it. We have to go to a Board of Finance for an appropriation. So there's a lot that has to happen. So I expect every part of this steep grant, this is the biggest steep grant we've ever done. It has multiple facets to it. Each one of these has to be looked at individually.
So
Same thing with the Ruderman and the Hangman Hill job, Brett. I'd gotten 2 different quotes of 2 different styles of doing them, and I picked the bigger one, of course, to submit. So then we'd have a big number, and hopefully we could deduct that as it goes.
well, yeah, and that's the benefit of the steep. You still get to put it out for bid, and hopefully it comes down from there. Because yes, it's great that it's still taxpayer dollars that pay for this ultimately, but our 20% is if we can get that down.
Yeah, so not putting in the 25 for the town hall yet. We had 754, 130 for the total steep grant, of which 603 would be at the grant and 150 would come from the town.
Yeah, I think if we could throw that other 25 grand in, right? I mean, we can go request up to $1 million if we've been approved every
Yeah,
one
I mean,
we
if
put
it's
in
not,
recently.
if it's not approved, it's,
It's not approved.
so they don't have to approve the whole thing in its entirety. They can say, you know what, North Stonington, we're gonna give you $750,000, do with it.
No, they have to improve it in its entirety, and
entirety.
each individual project, they're saying that's part of your project. We can then decide not to do part of the project without causing us to lose all the steep grant. So if
Okay.
we decide that we
Okay.
don't want to do the Ruderman Road pipes,
Yep.
we don't lose everything else.
Okay.
And that was the question we had about a month ago, whether that would happen or not.
Yep.
But speaking to the people at steep, that's not a factor.
So a question, I mean, I'm all in favor of this because obviously it makes sense. And as I tracked them over the years, I haven't seen many towns deny them. Few have been, but most of the times you get them. And
I think the fact that we were still on the distress list, I think we have 2 more years on the distress list, was we get a jump ahead.
what was our plan, Alan, to do these replacements without the steep grant? Were they going to be in the budget somewhere, or what?
So we would use the state aid road fund for it. So not all of it would get done this year, and then we wouldn't do any chip sealing.
Okay. All right, great.
So I think what I'm looking for is a motion to approve having the steep grant go in as is, possibly adding the $25,000 from the town hall parking lot, if I can get that added.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
to
we can
approve a
discuss.
steep grant with these projects, with hopefully the additional 25,000 in here as shown.
I'll second.
Okay. So I think, again, discussion here is we're not committed to any one of these particular projects. In your folders, you saw pictures of like what we could do with this room and so on. May turn out that the town doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But
So
it's-
with Gary in the room,
I'm trying to ignore that.
I
That's why I don't have my
Hi,
glasses
Gary.
on.
So he's waiting, he's sitting over there waiting for public comment. Can I just review for me and for Gary, probably, the 298 parking.
So
lot.
this 2A has two pots. So there's this room and then there's the parking lot.
Yeah,
So the
So to
parking
the
lot part of
parking-
it is that drawing that we had that you've seen, it's in your folder. It's not in your folder, it's in your packet. So the parking lot was designed a couple of years ago. It's a 37 car parking lot, I believe. And that is, Sue Cullen gave me about 1.5 inches of paperwork today to read on water, stormwater runoff, the amount of square footage that we can use for hardscape on this property versus what we have now versus what we can add, and what we can't have. So there's a lot, I've talked to planning and zoning about this, and there's quite a bit of vetting out there on the planning and zoning side to get this parking lot done. And we have to make sure, again, where does the water go? Are we adding too much hardscape? Are we removing any from somewhere else on the property and so on? So that'll be all vetted out when we divide this project up into different parts. The other part is this room. So it would be the permanent furniture that you have with electronics included, the chairs that go with it, changing that door to a double door, upgrading the two other doors on that side of the building to match the double door, doing a 7-foot apron along the whole front of the building because it has to be ADA accessible, having one ramp probably at the far door down there is the least amount of steeps. That's where the ramp would be. That's part of what the steep grant is. So it's a redo of this room as well as a parking lot. So then
so
we get,
the greenhouse is not touched.
the greenhouse is still there,
Okay.
but there's things that we can't put in lighting I mean, years ago, lighting, there was not a lot of rules. Now you can't put in lighting that leaves the property. So if lighting is up, it can't shine out, it's gonna shine down. So and again, Gary's concern was how much tar are we adding, how much asphalt are we adding to this property, and can we add it? Those kind of things. Where's the water go? Because there's the Assacont streams down there. Like, where does the water runoff go? And those things have to be answered. And this has to go through planning and zoning. So, so what Sue gave me is like a 25, 30-year history of this property and what's happened to it over those years. And also, I just got it this afternoon, so I haven't really read that much into it.
And the design might potentially change.
The design could change. It's a preliminary design.
So this looks very similar to what's behind the high school, like the layout, pretty much.
So again, it's
The
a
one way out, right, left.
yeah, I think it is kind of similar, but it moves traffic a certain way
Yeah.
and it gives us additional parking. And yeah, I know there's concerns and there's going to be concerns about, again, lighting, asphalt, lines, permanent asphalt versus, gravel. Where's all that stuff? It's going to have to be.
So there'll still be more discussion.
Oh, yeah. And planning and zoning is going to have to look at this like it's a project of somebody else coming in and doing this. And does it make sense?
I like that the emergency exits through Gary's property in this picture.
Don't antagonize him.
So, by the way, Gary, you're willing to make comment now because you don't have to wait till the end of the meeting to make comment. Well, we're going to be off this subject in a minute, so you don't want to forget anything. Any other discussion on steep grant? Because then I can open up the
I have a
public.
question
Yeah.
to Nicole's point about the laptops. Is that something that's included in the change here in the room, the meeting room? Can that be
So
added in?
it can be. It's not part of the plan, but if each of the 10 sections are going to have that docking section, right? So
You're
you're
gonna
going
have charging and all that stuff.
to be a phone charger, a docking charger for your computer. The microphone will be coming out of there. So each person will have their own setup. So if you have a laptop that you can incorporate, you could do that. I
Can the
think-
purchase of the tablets or laptops or whatever device be part of the steep grant?
Well, I think the steep grant is a number that's a ballpark number, and we try to aim a little higher. So there could be money that would be left in to do that. I don't think we're talking a lot of money for those,
No.
right?
Thank you.
And are those, just have to tell me, are those things that the individual brings to the meeting with them, or is it something that's always here?
It'll probably be assigned to each board member to take with them so they can, review the documentation,
Okay.
have their own credentials to log in
Because most of the, don't forget, we have multiple boards that have been using the same piece of
Right.
furniture. So, I mean, is it where if Nicole sits in the same spot every time, there's going to be other people from other boards sitting in that same spot. So
Yeah.
I don't know if, as far as the computer side of it, how that works.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to, it's late. We don't have to talk about it tonight, but I think it's definitely something we can explore based on how much the project here might be to include it. We might just purchase 10 tablets that stay here and I sign in, I log in to mine when I'm here. But when Sarah Nelson's here, she logs in to hers. So I don't know how that, from an IT security standpoint, from a town, but it's just something.
Mhm.
Definitely doable.
Yeah,
Well, if we ever get the furniture here, we can definitely discuss that.
yeah, let's,
Okay, if there's nothing else on steep grant, I'd like to open up the public comment on steep grants before we move on.
Are we voting first?
Sure.
And I'm
Oh, do
timing
you want to
them.
hear this? Or you want to do it?
are we what?
We talked about this before. Technically, once there's a motion in a second, the discussion's only the
All right, so I'm all about voting then. Let's do it. So there's already a motion on the floor. Already. All those in favor of moving this as is to a steep grant application, adding the $25,000 if we can to the town parking lot, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just a reminder about capital and how we mark reading the capital plan. It was not to be, it wasn't an and, it wasn't an or, it was an and. So it was, I'm sorry, it wasn't an and, it was an or. It was not added to the budget. So before there's discussion about endorsing the capital plan, therefore never having to affect that, that's entirely up to the Board of Selectmen. But if you have to make some hard decisions, you may want that flexibility. But the ultimate reason why I believe the Board of Finance didn't want to vote on it was we don't have audit results yet. We pushed the audit out. So until we have solid numbers, why would we endorse them?
Understand. We're going to have audit results hopefully by, is it the middle of March?
Middle of March.
Middle of March. So
No,
we'll-
I felt it was a bit of a toxic comment about wanting to revisit the Board of Finance again, because we all know why the decision was made, but sometimes we have convenient memories.
so I don't understand what you're
We
saying.
had this discussion at the last time, that when you said, are we gonna vote on this yet? And it all came out, and we agreed to not vote on it because if something had to change, it would require complete rule. But tonight's meeting didn't reflect any of those comments. It just reflected, I don't know why they didn't vote on it. And I just want to point that out.
And I don't remember that conversation going that deep, Gary. I apologize.
Okay,
I remember just saying that you weren't ready to vote on it this time.
I think they gave the,
that was just mine.
I think you
That was
guys,
just my comment. There were other comments that were made that you may have not heard.
And that
I
may
think
be the case.
ultimately they gave the, hey, we think it's okay based on how it is, but we're not voting on it technically. But I think to our point, what we were saying is the reason we talked about coming up with the capital plan to the beginning was to put it to bed, to get the blessing of the Board of Finance and put it to the side so we didn't have to touch it ultimately. Now, there was nothing to say we wouldn't touch it, but it was ultimately to get the blessing of the Board of Finance to say, we think that capital plan looks good. We're comfortable with it. Move on to the
Which
budget.
is basically what you got at the last
Right.
meeting, but to formally vote on it is completely different.
And maybe that's a process we look to in the future. So there's plenty of towns out there that actually, they vote as a town on the capital budget much earlier than the regular budget.
I think that was your suggestion at one point. You said other towns vote on this in the early part of the budget season, correct? You never said that? Other towns did this in September and they voted on this?
I said that.
You did? Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. But thanks for the clarity. Save it for that meeting. If we ever get, we might not get the steep grant, so save it for that meeting. You don't have
You
it?
can take my copy. Bob, you want to autograph it?
Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Gary, for clarity. Tax refunds?
get my packet back out here.
Do we have
So
any? I don't think we have any. Oh, we,
I
we
did see
do.
something. at the
Yep.
end. So I
I was only two.
will make a motion for tax refunds totaling $109.93 to Frank Denier and Charles Dufton.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Old business, we already did that. Is there any other public comment? Going to here, anybody online that wants to say anything?
Not seeing any.
No? Okay, our next meeting is what says March 4th. That's the next BOS meeting, but we have a joint meeting tomorrow night at 7 with the Board of Finance, which will have those presentations. Okay, on that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned at 8:25.